How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Commander Tribe Elder. I just wanted to go ahead and say that I was a little bit faulty in my last video. I said I probably wasn't going to get any of the Commander Masters Pre-Con decks. I changed my mind. I'm getting the Sliver one. I thought this would be a good opportunity to go over my personal Sliver deck. As far as the other deck goes, I haven't really looked at the list for it. I'm not sure what's in it. I did look at the Eldrazi deck. I'm not a big fan of Eldrazi, so that's a hard pass for me. And I did look at the Enchantress deck. It looks pretty standard for, that thing that it does. And that was just kind of a brief glimpse of that one. And I really didn't look at the other two. But I do like slivers, and so I went ahead and grabbed the sliver deck. Again, I have not looked at the list, so I'm not sure what's in there, see how it compares with my deck, and kind of just have fun from there. I will probably do a upgrade on the Sliver deck, or at least show it. And yeah, we'll take care of that at a later time. For now, I do use the Sliver Overlord for my commander. It costs Wooburg, which is just white, blue, black, red, green. It's a legendary creature, Sliver Mutant. It's a 7/7. You could pay 3, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. And you can also pay 3 and gain control of target sliver. It is worth noting that if a card says like a tribal goblin sorcery, you could pick that out with it. Or no, sorry, if it says tribal changeling tribal card, or if a card is changeling in its text, then you can grab that with this also, because it's technically a sliver. So I don't know why I said goblin. I was thinking of something else. Anyway, but yeah, you can grab those cards too. Like Crib Swap. It's changeling for its creature type, which is a sorcery. And it does exiling and puts a changeling into play. But yeah, it's a sliver also. I actually use it in my vampire deck. Anyway, just a side note there. Because it does say sliver card, not sliver creature. Anyhow, I don't think they've made any like enchantments that are sliver specifically. Anyhow. We'll go ahead and start off with the mana base. There are 16 non-basic lands in here. The first is Sand Step Citadel. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it produces either a white, black, or green. There's a lot of tap lands in here, unfortunately. It had the best that I could put in there. A lot of them are Triome type lands, though. They produce 3 if they enter in the battlefield tapped in most cases, or have a clause to be untapped. Next is Blighted Woodland. You pay 1, or you tap it for 1, colorless, or you could pay 3 and a green, tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them into the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Next is Mana Confluence. You tap it, pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color. Next is Zagoth Triome. It is a Swamp Forest Island, and it produces either a black, green, or white, and it does enter the battlefield tapped, and you can also pay 3 to cycle it. Next is Path of Ancestry. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you scry 1, which is just take the top card off your library, take a peek at it, and decide whether you want it on the top or the bottom of the library. Evolving Wilds. You tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Next is Godless Shrine. It is both a plains and a swamp. It produces either white or black mana. And then it enters the battlefield. You may pay 2. If you didn't, it enters tapped. Next is Jund Panorama. You can tap it for a colorless, or you could pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic swamp, mountain, or forest, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Next is Jungle Shrine. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for either a red, green, or white mana. Next is Savai Triome. It is a mountain, swamp, plains. You can tap it for either red, white, or black, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and you can also cycle it away for 3 mana. Survivor's Encampment. It is a desert, which really doesn't mean anything here. You can tap it for a colorless. You can also tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Prismatic Vista. You tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Note, it did not say tapped. Gateway Plaza. I'm really not a big fan of these kind of lands, but it's, I believe, the only one. It is a gate. It enters the battlefield tap, so force tap. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1, and then you can pay, or you tap it for any color of mana. Command Tower, tap it for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Frontier Bivouac, it enters the battlefield tapped and produces either a green, blue, or red. Ash Barrens, you can tap it for a colorless, or while it's in your hand, you can basic land cycle it for 1, which just means you discard it, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. Next we have 4 basic swamps, 4 basic plains, 4 basic mountains, 4 basic islands, and 5 basic forests. And that is our mana base. Next, we're going to go to the ramp category. And I kind of broke this up just by generalized stuff that deck does, just because, slivers kind of feed off of each other and do all this weird, crazy stuff amongst themselves. So you'll see some slivers throughout the different subcategories like, ramp, draw, removal, board wipes, etc., etc. Anyway, the first category is, or this next category is ramp. So the first is Soul Ring. It costs 1 for an artifact. Tap it, produce 2 colorless mana. Next is the Mox Tantalite. It has no casting cost, but you could suspend it for 0, and it gets 3 suspend counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, you just remove a suspend counter. Once you remove all the suspend counters, then you cast it. Our commander costs 5, so this is fine. I found it very useful anyway. Anyhow, you tap it for 1 mana of any color. Our first sliver, the Mana Weft Sliver. It's 1 and a green for a sliver. It's a 1/1. Creatures you control, or sliver creatures you control, have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Next is Arcane Signet. It's 2 for an artifact. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Next is Dryad of the Elysian Grove. It's 2 and a green for a 2/4 nymph. It is one of the few non-sliver creatures in the deck. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. I kind of put this as a ramp spell because essentially that's what I use it for. It's Morph on the Boundless. It's 7 for a legendary creature shapeshifter. It's a 6/6 changeling, which means it counts as every creature type. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, slivers of course. Spells of the chosen type you cast cost essentially WUBR glass, white, blue, black, red, and green less to cast. This effect only reduces the amount of colored mana you pay. So, for example, if we were going to cast, actually he does not count. Our commander would be free with him. If you were paying for the Mana Weft Sliver, he would just be 1 colorless and not have the green. So that's how that works. Also, he gives creatures you control the chosen type +1/+1, which is nice. I know it's not technically ramp because the lands go into your hand, but instead of making 12 categories, I kind of narrowed it down. So these sort of cards are in here also. And it's the Armorality Sphere. It costs 2 for an artifact. You pay 2, sacrifice it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, shuffle your library. Cultivate. It's 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 into the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. Fel Warstone. It's 2 for an artifact. Add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce. I find this you could generally get 4 of the 5 colors that you need with this, so no problems. Spring Leaf Drum, it's 1 for an artifact. Tap it, tap an untapped creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. We will generally have spare creatures, so not a huge biggie on that one. Next is the Gemhide Sliver. It's 1 and a green for a Sliver. That is a 1/1. It's just like the other one. Except this is all Slivers have. Tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Traveler's Amulet. It's an artifact for 1. Pay 1, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. These are definitely not strictly ramp spells, but they do save you a lot of mana, and they can enter you into combo territory with the... there's a little surprise later on. I'm sure you know, I've revealed that I have it before. But anyway, the first one's Hearthstone. It's 3 for an artifact. The cost of creature abilities require an activation cost is reduced by 1. This cannot reduce an ability's generic mana cost to less than 1. And Training Grounds essentially does the same, less but better. It's blue mana for an enchantment. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost up to 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to activate to less than 1 mana. So very similar cards there. Alrighty. Next is a little 8-card draw package. And I made it mostly a smaller, it's more to push through to get lands. Once you get your commander out, drawing becomes a negligible concept because you could just search your library for whatever sliver you want instead of randomly coming across it. So anyway, the first one is Preordain. It's a sorcery. You pay a blue, scry 2. Again, let's just look at the top 2, decide whether they go on the top or the bottom of the library, and then you draw a card. Next is Foresee. It's 3 and a blue. It's a sorcery. Scry 4, then draw 2. Next is Spring to Mind. It's X, blue, blue. You draw X cards. One of my favorite tribal draw cards, one of my favorite tribal cards, period, right here is Distant Melody. It's 3 and a blue, sorcery. Choose a creature type, slivers, of course. Draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. Synapse Sliver, it's 4 and a blue. I think this is one of the highest cost slivers that is not all 5 colors. It's a 3/3 sliver. Whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player's control, it may draw a card. Realm Walker, it does not say sliver anywhere on it, but it's changeling, so it's a sliver. It's 2 and a green for a 2/3 shapeshifter changeling, which makes it a sliver. As Realm Walker enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. Mnemonic Sliver, it's 2 and a blue for a 2/2 sliver. Each sliver gains pay 2, sacrifice this creature, draw a card. And Tamio's Epiphany, it's 3 and a blue, scry 4, then draw 2. And that is all of the draw cards. Next is a removal package that is 12 cards deep. The first is Lava Belly Sliver. It's 1, a red, and a white for a 2/2 sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, and you gain 1 life. Mostly call it removal because you can get rid of the planeswalkers. And it's kind of like a weird win condition sort of thing. Next is Disallow. It's 1 blue blue for an instant target creature spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Mana abilities can't be targeted. It counters target spell, activated, or triggered ability. Next is Blade Back Sliver. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2 sliver. It has Hellbent, as long as you have no cards in hand, which is the Hellbent trigger. Sliver creatures you control have tapped. This creature deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. Again, the removal on the planeswalker side. Absorb. It's 1 blue blue. Counter target spell, gain 3 life. Next is OG counter spell. 2 blue for just counter target spell. Return to Nature, it's 1 and a green. You get to choose 1, either destroy target artifact, target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. Next is Spiteful Sliver. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2 Sliver. Slivers you control have, when this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, I didn't realize until this moment how much planeswalker hate is actually in this deck. I have no particular reason for that. I've run across very few Sliver or Super Friends decks. Maybe 2 in the last year. maybe longer. Anyway, one of my favorites, Beast Within. It's 2 and a green for an instant destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 beast, green beast creature token. Next is Swords to Plowshares. Love this because it gets rid of boogeymen like Blightsteel Colossus. Exile target creature's control gains life equal to its power, especially in this deck. We don't care that you gain 11 measly life. Chaos Warp, also another personal favorite of mine. It's 2 and a red for an instant. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into his or her library, reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's a permanent card, he or she puts it into the battlefield. Land, 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 land. That's when everybody starts chanting and banging on the table. Land, 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 land. Anyway, Acidic Sliver. It is a black and a red for a 2/2 Sliver. All Slivers have pay 2, sacrifice this permanent. This permanent deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Again, on the creature hate now. And Necrotic Sliver. It's 1, a white and a black for a 2/2 Sliver. All Slivers have pay 3, sacrifice this permanent, destroy target permanent. And these kind of cards where it's like pay 2, pay 3, this is where those Hearthstone and Training Grounds really come into play. Unfortunately, with my loadout, I can't really search for them, but that's okay. Next is Board Wipes. I only have 3 Board Wipes, and they're kind of funny ones. Don't really see these too much in play. Maybe one of them. That'd be this one. I've seen this one a few times. It's Terminus. It's 4 white, white. It's a sorcery. Put all creature cards on the bottom of their owner's libraries. Why did I put this in there? Maybe because when I play my commander, hey, I know where all my creatures are now in the case of a board wipe, and I can just go grab them real quick. And they go back into my deck, so I'm actually able, as long as I can cast my commander, I can build it really, really, really quickly after this board wipe. Oh, it also has Miracle, which is an old concept. I wish they'd bring it back. I think they did at one time, but anyway. You may cast this card for its Miracle cost, which in this case is just a single white mana. If you draw it, if it's the first card you draw this turn. So that's why all the draw spells are like actual draw instead of put it into your hand. Next is Ruinous Ultimatum. It's 2 red, 3 white, and 2 black for a sorcery. Destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. So one-sided board wipe. And this is just a fun one. It's Polymorpher's Jest. It's 1 blue, blue. Until the end of the turn, each creature target player controls loses all abilities and becomes a blue frog with base power and toughness 1/1. Note, if you are playing against Hydras, you actually just boosted everything up 1 point. Yeah, it's not the best one against counter decks. If they're putting a lot of counters on 1/1 counters on their permanents, this is not the best board wipe. If you have somebody that plays a lot of 1/1 counters, do not use this. Switch it out for something else, because it actually adjusts the physical stats on the card. So if you have a Hydra that's 0/0, but it's got 12 1/1 counters on it, it now becomes a technical 13/13, not a 1/1. So you kind of have to be careful with this one. Like I said, some just goofy kind of board wipes that you don't see very often. Next is my protection package. It is 5 of them. This is probably the first Sliver that I go grab after I grab the Sliver Overlord, because I do have the 5 mana, pay 3, go look for it, pay the other 2, plop it into play, and now my creatures have Shroud. It is the Crystalline Sliver. It's 1 and a blue, it's a 2/2 Sliver, all Slivers have Shroud. Just negates any more interaction with most of your board. Next is the Sliver Hivelord. It costs Wooburg. It's white, which is white, blue, red, black, green. I'm going to stop saying that. Legendary creature, Sliver. It's a 5/5. Creatures you control have indestructible. So, if you can pull this the next turn after pulling the other one, knock yourself out. Now they're shrouded and removal options are getting very narrow. At that point, you'd have to do like a polymorph or just, well, no, because they're still indestructible. You have to use -1/-1 tactics, exile tactics, return a hand tactics, put in the library tactics. Those exist, but they're a lot harder to, there's not a ton of them. Anyhow, all else fails, Hibernation Sliver. It's blue and a black for a 2/2 Sliver. All slivers have pay 2 life. Return this permanent to owner's hand. And this can actually come in handy when you do the Cascade Sliver. If you want to, pop something out and then pay for it again, boom. Especially if you have the one that redo, or if you have Morphon out, then it's just free to recast. If you do that, I do have in here later a Sliver that can gain you life. So then 3 life becomes a negligible price, and you're just pulling out tons of creatures. Next is Clawed Sliver. It's 1 and a black for a 1/1 Sliver. All slivers have pay 2, regenerate this permanent. And the last card is Etchings of the Chosen. It's 1, a white, and a black for an enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control the chosen type get +1/+1. You can also pay 1, sacrifice a creature of the chosen type. Target creature you control gains indestructible until the end of the turn. So that is all for protection. Next we have, I just listed this as utility creatures. Some of it can get combo-y, some of it's just like French vanilla abilities. That just means like keyword abilities. It's just kind of a mishmash. I was going to separate all the Anthem effects, but then I realized some of that crossed over and it's more like a sub thing than an actual thing. So that's all just kind of mixed up into one category. My utility creatures. First one is Homing Sliver. I like this because it doubles as my commander if he gets a little ridiculous to pay. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2 Sliver. Each Sliver in each player's hand has Sliver Cycling 3, which just means you pay 3. Discard this card, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it's essentially what the commander does. Next is Wing Sliver. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1 Sliver. All slivers have flying. Essence Sliver. This is our life gainer. It's 3 and a white for a 3/3 Sliver. Whenever slivers, basically it's lifelink. Whenever a Sliver deals damage, his controller gains that much life. Forget the symbol there. Yeah, I'm not going to think of it. Next is the first Sliver. It's Wooburg. Legendary Creature Sliver, 7/7, Cascade. Sliver spells you have Cascade. So this is a fun one. I almost put this in the next section just because it can get crazy, but it's not guaranteed to. If your next Sliver is 2, then you go look for a 1 spell, and then you're done. So I found that, it gets you an extra creature or 2. That's about it. Next is Sliver Legion. It costs Wooburg as well. It's a 7/7. All slivers creatures get +1/+1 for each other sliver on the battlefield. That can get nasty and very complicated if you have an opponent playing slivers as well. Quick Sliver. It's 1 and a green for 1/1. It has flash, and any player may play sliver cards as though they had flash also. Kind of funny wording on this one, because this actually affects the player and not the slivers themselves. I think I don't know if that's just a technical reason for that, like you can't put an ability word keyword on a card in hand. I don't know if I never thought about that until just right now. I wonder if that's why they said it that way, and basically said for the players. Anyway, next is Sinew Sliver. It's 1 and a white for a 1/1 Sliver. All slivers get +1/+1. Next is Talon Sliver. Probably my favorite picture of a sliver from the old style. I don't know, just something about the color contrast. Anyway, it's 1 and a white for a 1/1 Sliver. All slivers gain first strike. Cloud Shredder Sliver. It's red and a white for a 1/1 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have haste and flying. Which is really useful if you want to go combo-y, because then he allows your slivers to immediately tap using the Sinew or the Gem Sliver. I forget what its full name is. Muscle Sliver. It's 1 and a green for a 1/1 Sliver. All sliver creatures get +1/+1. Temperate Sliver, it's 2 and a green for a 2/2 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Gale Rider Sliver, it's a blue for a 1/1 Sliver. Slivers you control have flying. Two-Headed Sliver, it's 1 and a red for a 1/1 Sliver. All Slivers have menace, which just means they have to be blocked by 2 or more creatures. Heart Sliver, another haste Sliver. It's 1 and a red for a 1/1 Sliver. All Slivers have haste. Very tempting to put this into the other next category also. But in any case, it's 3 and a blue for a 2/2 Sliver. Slivers can't be blocked except by other Slivers. Next is the Lancer Sliver. It's 2 and a white for a 2/2 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have first strike, doubling up on the first strike there. And the last in this category is the Spinneret Sliver. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 Sliver. All Sliver creatures have reach, which just means they can block flyers. So quite a few in there for flying defense. All right, so this is the last category, last 3 cards. I call this my Bolo section. This is be on the lookout. That's what Bolo means, be on the lookout. When these hit the board or get played, you're probably losing. I probably have the game in hand when one of these pops down, and yeah, then it's just all over. Usually. Hopefully. The first one is Impact Tremors. It's 1 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Hopefully at this time I either have a system of cheap slivers coming out or am producing them as tokens. How am I producing them as tokens? Sliver Queen, cost Wooburg, it's 7/7. Sliver Queen counts as a sliver, even though it's a legend. And you pay 2, put a Sliver token into play, treat this token as a 1/1 creature. This is why I wanted to put the slivers can't be blocked except by slivers creature into this section also. Because if you have a haste sliver, you have that sliver, then you could just amass over and overwhelm your opponent. Yeah, when this hits, either I'm dying or you are. And then I put in kind of a thwompy overrun type spell. Just wanted to put this into a deck, and I was like, hey, let's do it. It's Titanic Ultimatum. It's 2 red, 3 green, 2 white for a sorcery. Until the end of the turn, creatures you control get +5/+5, gain first strike, lifelink, and trample. So yeah, 10 creatures, which is modest. So that's... Actually, let's make it 9, because then it's an even 50. I'm not going to math right now. Anyway, yeah, when this hits, it could be very devastating, even if you have 5 of them out, and they are just all 6/6s. Let alone having your commander out and some of the other larger power toughness slivers. Yeah, just one of my little cards that I love putting into decks. Anyhow, so that's it for my Sliver deck. I did go ahead and do my Sauron deck. I want to play test it at least once or twice in a game. I've kind of ran it just real quick a couple times on the table and kind of see how it goes. It seems to be firing off pretty well the way I have it adjusted. So that might be my next video, depending on how long it takes the Sliver deck to get in. If the Sliver deck comes in, I'm going to unbox that thing and get all over it. And yeah, so that's the plan. And we'll go ahead and catch you at that time. Have a good one.